Yeah, I think I put this in. You know, COVID-19, normally corona is only the upper airways and you get a cold and you get rid of it. But with the mutations, the two mutations which had the corona, which caused the COVID-19 pandemic, was one that it not only goes into the upper airways, but also goes to the lung and to the alveoli. And in the alveoli, this is an alveoli, you get an inflammation which is blistering. Okay, yeah, this one is blistering. So you get a lot of fluid in your alveoli, and this gives you the problem that you cannot breathe. Because people cannot breathe, they have not enough oxygen in their blood. They were given extra air. And sometimes it was given too much air because it was reacting of the symptom. The disease was not really known. And when you push too much air in your lungs, you also get lung damage. And a lot of people, unfortunately, got by medical care lung damage due to this treatment. And that is all caused because you do not know the disease. And because it was also infecting the alveoli, you got the epidermis here in the alveoli infected, and the platelets, blood platelets, are similar. And there the virus could transfer from the alveoli to the nearby bloodstream, and by the bloodstream it could go through the whole body, even into the brain. So you get the renal problems, the hepatic problems, the problems in your gastrointestinal system, and also in the kidneys already mentioned. So then it went systemic, the disease, and then it is life threatening. That is, in fact, what happens when a common virus certainly gets two changes in its genetic system and goes as a new emerging virus pathogenic. And a lot of things we already know. I have contacts over there, and long before the outbreak, you got already sometimes similar, but it disappeared as well. And it was on the social media, we checked. They mentioned it Faridon, which is an unknown lung disease. I'm suffering something with my lung, I do not know why, and I'm not feeling healthy, but it's you overcome it. What could be a scenario when you're doing genetic experiments like in the Boston lab on viruses? You can do function adding research, you gain of function research. And this has its threats. Because when you are doing gain of function research, like in the Boston lab, it might be that in your lab, a small animal, mice or whatever, gets infected. Problem. But the mice went out. Perhaps the mice is catched by a cat. Get infected. Close by. A human being, owner of the cat, could also get infected. And then the virus is in a state where the receptor protein, the spike protein, is not very effective for the human being. So you get a little bit flu-like symptoms, goes over. And then it went back again in the animal world. The dog is infected, the cat is infected, or a rat is infected. And then at a certain moment, it is infectious for human beings again. And that could be on a market where you have some weird animals which are nice as a delicatessen and you are going to eat it. And then it goes at a certain moment, move, as a big pandemic. It started, in fact, a year earlier in an experiment. So to make a direct relation that most people want to do, and especially the West wants to do, that's not realistic. It's nature. Constantly, the viruses, the bacteria, also our own cells are mutating. We get a lot of cancer cells in our body, but the normal immune system says, that's not a normal cell, get it out and kill it. So only when this is dysregulated, when we do not have enough immune capacity to kill all the weird cells, at that moment, you get ill. You get an illness. And with cancer cells, you get cancer. So that's the reason why smokers and people with unhealthy habits get cancer earlier. This is something we have to keep in mind. So the beginning of a new emerging disease can be in the far past. It can be unintentional. It can also be a natural effect. But by this going up and down, and at a certain moment going to a human being, and there is a chance that it goes to a pandemic. And that happened here as well. So the Chinese were already prepared, and that was good. Some people said a little bit too much, like Wen Liang Li, he was honored, but died also officially from COVID-19 as well, although that's still doubtful. Anyway, they had good medical facilities and also the testing facilities were in place. 1 year later, the WHO came to visit the fish market in Wuhan, and also our national specialist, Professor Marion Kogans, was there, made pictures out of the bus. I do not know what is an added value on this. I think this mission of WHO didn't deliver much. I was in China for the US for DITRA in 2008, discussing a theme, vaccine, new products, procedures, and evaluations. That's me, right here. It's selling buttons. And at that moment, I gave a lecture on new vaccines. And one of the slides was this one from Sinovac. Provide Chinese children with international quality vaccines. That's why I was there. But also provide children in the world with vaccines made in China. And Sinovac was quite successful with COVID-19 because they made the only halal vaccine. And so in Indonesia and all Muslim countries, they were successful in selling the vaccines. So, and yeah, that's one preparation I recommend. But also, the isolation from SARS-CoV coronavirus came from a patient was on January 8th, the first isolation. 3 days later, the genome was completely sequenced. World record. But they used the nuts computer and supercomputer and quantum computer to do this. But the genome was correct. And this is also the genome on which all the COVID-19 tests and the first vaccines were designed. Remember that because I'm coming back to the design of the gene. And then 50, the first travelers in Asia were infected with new coronavirus. 7 days later. And then at 20, the first human-to-human infection. Because you can have a zoonotic disease where you can get the animal from the animal the disease to you, but you cannot forward it to others. Like anthrax, I can get anthrax from my dog, but when I'm infected with anthrax, I cannot infect another human being. But then you had human-to-human infections. It's the next phase in an upcoming pandemic. And one day later, the number of patients explodes from 15 to almost 8,000. And then this huge hospital was set up in the center in China where it was done. This was the Wuhan facility. So, yeah, research has its things. I already discussed this slide, and we already discussed the bed. Because what was the bed dangerous for? There was also the rabies is in bed, and rabies is also one of those viruses I do not want to have in my body. The bed selects those viruses which can withstand hibernation and therefore selects virus which can transfer over surfaces. Gain of function research, it is a risk, and always keep it well closed in a BSL-4 lab. Although the Americans did gain of function research themselves, they still accused officially the Chinese in Wuhan that this Wuhan lab produced the virus which was there detected, discovered for the first time at the food market. But as already indicated, it might be between this incident and this incident 1 year in between. But that is a political discussion, and I only can advise how science works. We are not prepared, and this is what happens. In the first instance, you get a lot of different strains. This is the original strains from the COVID-19, on which all the tests and the first vaccines are designed. But soon you get all kinds of different strains, and that's why the virus is very active in making all kinds of changes. It's continuously in mutation. So worldwide you see all kinds of strains, and yeah, I hope you had already a lecture on virology, isn't it? Yeah. So this system how a virus uses the mechanisms from the bacteria or the host cell to produce its virus is known. But then the old strains are going away because they are not effective. They are not adapted to their new environment. And new other strains are getting more successful in life. This is in July 21. You see that there is already a less differentiation in the strains. Then you are going to October 21, and then you see that there are other strains, the Delta virus is coming up, and then at a certain moment you have the Omicron as the dominant SARS coronavirus 2 dominant. And what we have learned, a virus is not designed to kill you. A virus is designed to multiply. So a virus always mutates far faster than we do, and the most successful will survive. So the virus which can multiply the most is most adapted to the host will multiply. It's not intention to make you ill. And that's why the Omicron at the end is the most successful one. But the Omicron has less relation to the original one, and therefore a lot of tests were not effective anymore, and also the older vaccines were less effective because the spike protein has changed. And the sequencing is done for a big deal in the UK. In the UK, this blue segment, they did a lot of these typing of the virus because they had genetic equipment still there from the Human Genome Project of the Wellcome Sanger Institute. And yeah, so they had capacity to do all this sequencing. But yeah, luckily they could do it in this way because otherwise you never would have the capacity to test all those strains. So the dominant strain constantly changes. You see here the delta. Some regions you see that there are still other strains active, but globally you see that every strain selection is similar. Why? Human are similar. So it has more effect on the environment, human environment where it is than the location where the virus is, which is normal. This is where the Omicron, and the Omicron is indeed also at that moment all over the world. At that moment, because a lot of people get diseased by the COVID-19, the Omicron, you see that the influenza is getting from more different strains to only one dominant strain. And because we had already antibodies against this influenza, you can explain why, when there is such a pandemic, suddenly the influenza, which is also a very nasty, very often mutating virus, is now calm and not very aggressive. General in the epidemiology. But when it is only one strain of virus, then you get that our immune system gets lazy against the antigens of influenza. Of course, it's only one strain. When you introduce at that moment a new strain of influenza, and you can do this by mixing animals and people and getting chicken influenza or bird influenza or whatever influenza, suddenly it will be very effective. And that was happened in the last days of the COVID-19 outbreak in China, that in Liaoning, suddenly a lot of children, which did not know all these strains of influenza, got severe influenza. But when you have lived several years completely in isolation, never stimulating your immune system against the influenza, and you get more susceptible for the influenza. And those are also the balances you need to have constantly in your mind when you are raising children. My children were allowed to play in the stables of the horses because that would strengthen their immune system and less allergic reaction instead of children who are completely clean in isolation. They create the allergies. So what can we learn from this? And there are some therapies thought, like from the Institute of Tropical Medicine in London, where they suggest that people who are in isolation or in these periods, that they get antigens from the normal influenza strains, just to create more immunity against all kinds of environmental biological threats. In November 16, there was again such an influenza outbreak in Beijing, but also the newspaper. But fortunately, it was quickly under control. But there was quite a lot of panic in Beijing last November. And yeah, you had already the virology. This is, of course, a single-strand RNA virus, and that's why it can mutate so quickly. A more conservative virus, like a DNA virus, when it's damaged at one place, it will repair to the other side of the strain, and then you have less mutation. But the RNA viruses, like the coronavirus, they are the dangerous ones, and also, of course, influenza. And then, yeah, it's a spike protein, which is something where you want to make an antibody against. And so when you only identify the spike protein, the genetic material, and you build it into another virus, which is not really dangerous for people because we have already immunity against it, you can infect people with the virus. It makes this extra spike protein from the pathogen where you want to vaccinate against, and then you are vaccinated. And recently, Moderna and BioNTech made this more simple by making a ready to produce, ready to be used RNA sequence in a liposome. Bringing this into the bloodstream will be picked up by the lymphatic system in the lymph nodes, and the lymph nodes produce this spike protein, and of course immunity is raised and you have your immunity. So these are the mRNA virus vaccines, which are in fact a deliverable result of the outbreak of COVID-19. This is already mentioned, and yeah, it's a remarkable moment. It does not interfere with the nucleus nor DNA, because you introduce the RNA directly for the ribosome, the construction elements in the cell for protein builders, and then it makes direct contact to the immune system, and immunity is generated. In fact, a beautiful, simple system. But of course, it was new, and you get a lot of remarks and a lot of protests and experiments and fake news. Now, you can repeat the lecture on fake news and psyops again. It happens. You get reports, and again, we are now, since last week, again in such a phase. It could be a new outbreak of this HK-U5 coronavirus too. It was described a few weeks ago in Cell, a scientific magazine, and it does not infect from human to human that fast, fortunately, but it is now identified from a bat, and you know what a bat means, infected from the table tissue as well, and again from the Wuhan Institute, who is now publishing again. Since October 2020, they stopped communication, but they are coming back with new publications, and this Cell publication is an important one. There are other diseases as well. This is an Ebola-like disease. Has no name yet. It's from only a few days ago in Africa, but quite serious. Also originating from a bat. Oh, sorry. Surgeon Nagabato from the Bikori Hospital in Congo has seen it. It comes from children which ate bat and died within 48 hours. They are, yeah, a source of a lot of virus. But this is typical in hemorrhagic fever, like syndrome, like a Marburg virus, and Ebola does. 400 cases now in Bomate. We'll see how it will continue. But these are things which happen and are quite serious mutations of genes, of pathogens. Nature as a big terrorist. Yeah, and to keep this secret, because when you have this in the media, people could say, I would like to have some it. I can use it as a weapon. And indeed, the CEO, Shiri Mikio from Japan, oh, I'm getting tired now as well. He tried to collect the Ebola virus, but didn't, had no success. But it is easy to get from these samples infected material, which can be misused as well. So the information is, in fact, also dual use. But I think you should share it, because to make it secret, it does not give security. Even when you follow this line as a password, with quantum computing, you will find out in a few seconds what your password is. So that's also my message to all kinds of intel organizations. Limit secret stuff as much as possible. Because nowadays, with internet, with quantum computing, with ChatGPT and other AI, it's almost impossible to keep things secret. Just be aware that it can be misused and be prepared and informed. That concludes my last presentation. Are questions? Yeah. 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 At this moment, WHO is in need. They will send samples, and there are some WHO reference labs in, I think they're like in Dakar. They have also the gene technology in their laboratories to detect what kind of pathogen is there. You do not want to send these samples directly overseas. And depending from that results, and they are not known yet because that's also no name for this disease, I assume it is a variant of the Ebola.
Because it's still a hemorrhagic fever.
It's an hemorrhagic fever, that's clinical symptoms. And that's easy because hemorrhagic fever you recognize from all four things. Further questions? No? Then I have a suggestion. Yeah. I quickly give you a cases, and in two groups, you are going to discuss how to approach this, and then you give a presentation, or one from each group, how to work with this scenario. I close this one. I'm going quickly to my task to you. Oh, yeah, I got it. Syndicate work. Yeah. get a task. You are preparing a stabilization mission in a country with an armed conflict. Mind, this Ebola-like disease was in Congo near Uganda, and there we have at this moment now conflict. So whenever you have to go there and to do something there, what are we going to do? I give you some. The country is populated with different ethnic groups. That's the case over there in that region, as you know. Yeah, I did not have a printout of this. That is an issue. I thought I got it.
You can take pictures.
Please make a picture. One group, the other group. Or write something down. The country is with two different ethnic groups. The mission is a stabilization mission between two rebellious ethnic groups, the green and the brown. In the country, we are speaking of different languages and have different religions. When you think about this Congo, Uganda region, you have the Muslims and the Christian population over there. The rural villages are only populated with persons from the green ethnic group and some villages. So, you know, the group in the countryside is more green. Predominantly along highways, they have mixed population. And in the big cities, both groups are living, but predominantly the brown ethnic group. So the brown ethnic group is more in the cities. We have a lot of emerging diseases, okay. We have zoonotic diseases, okay. And now, in a rain season, cattle in the green communities getting suddenly ill and dying. This creates more problems with living conditions in the rural areas. So the green people get problems. There are rumors that a veterinary disease is brought to the country by the import of goats donated from a Western country. At a moment of deployment, some citizens died from an unknown hemorrhagic fever. This gives rumors. This is, that's how Ebola lies in the reality. Hemorrhagic fever, very serious. And it is in fact an inflammation of your immune system, what happens. These are already explained, all the hemorrhagic. The disease is also diagnosed recently in a neighboring country, and the president of your host country wants to close the border. The neighboring country doesn't want to close borders to prevent economic damage and eventually wants to use force to keep the borders open. There was already an armed conflict, and then, because of the closing borders, the isolation procedure, you get another problem. You are added to the stabilization mission as a CBRN specialist, and you have to prepare the mission. This is a slide which indicates that religious groups, ethnic groups, and countries are not the same. Ethnic groups are going over borders. A long time ago, the British and the French made the borders in such a case that they were sure that not one ethnic group is in one country. So you always have some destabilization. That's another thing. You have to decide now on advice to close borders to prevent further spreading of contagious disease, and to close borders. To decide on the CBRN team, what kind of specialists and number you need, what kind of equipment you need, special training necessary for such a team, preparation of relation management, preparation of communication and engagement from the CBRN threat perspective. So that means that you have already a plan in which you have to decide how you are going to approach the local population in such a situation. I keep this one on. And that's any questions. I put this as the decision on. And I'll ask you, because I'm getting tired now. And to prepare a short commanders briefing. You know commanders briefing. Commanders never have time. They are. They do not want to hear many words. They only want to hear a decision. So make commanders briefing, which is about 5 to 10 minutes, not longer, and present it in half an hour. 5 minutes we start because we have an action emergency now. In half an hour, prepare a briefing for me. For 1, 2, 3. Okay? Go to action.
Yeah.
Everything is falling, right?
That's very interesting. You had the what's going on? Relatively that's that.
No, that's no back to
I recognize this. Yeah, the first guy.
Sure. I confini per venire che ci siano un ulteriore contatto. That's something. I don't know. Advice. Bisogna che sono mai io non chiedo a parte le grida buono per necessità speciale per i membri del team relation management ma io per nel senso good right for the people due esperti di contatti non è solo ci sono due parlare con loro e anche probabilmente mi ricordo eccetera But special treat is going to go. We are yes. Well, it's not the poco da parola. È missione organizzazione e questa è la missione di stabilizzazione soprattutto vicino alle strade. C'è un flusso di nelle varie necessità vivono beh, se tu hai vicino alle strade, tu ci devi yes, questo va messo nella preparazione dei film security. Nelle città c'è costo di nella European Western stanno usando una serie questo crea impegni sentita nelle aree però poi anche vivere ogni grande specialità già queste voci che è anche esatto l'ambientazione di diverso cioè mandare le prese occidentali. Quindi sarà un'orientazione del suo posto, non so per farsi
nel Western Country che potrebbe essere più no, non sappiamo che sulle zone che o caso di tenda
You stop the disease, the host country wants to close the border. One of the countries becomes the border. But the neighboring country doesn't want to continue. So they will use the force. The border.
Diceva che sono stati anche se ci sono caratteristiche sue il fatto che lui fosse per sembra la politica dice che in qualche modo provoca anche questo
He said that
Okay.
so proprio non siamo qui da sul set e stiamo cercando di stabilizzare
The device is the nice view.
to stabilize the situation and
Two neighboring countries and again at the
yeah, it's a situation between green and non-address
and the neighbors.
e questo sì
And as this country, one of the big university, and it's also the green and
And that's
and the other countries.
diagnosticato recentemente anche un paese vicino. Il presidente, questo paese, lui vuole chiudere il paese
So also the Greens are
eventualmente può usare
and the Greens have been but they do have one close to me. And then it's up to us to give advice, in order to essentially the training.
e questo
For our people. The advice to close the books to prevent but now can decide the CEO is we have team that's all that's really we can decide all that
Okay. If I look at the two teams, one for this one for protection, the monitoring and the saving, and one team for the laboratory and the Allora, quanto è
I see, yeah, I've seen those, I guess, you know, you know what it is.
di quello che è l'obiettivo, io non sono l'obiettivo.
I think, well, if,
Però concentriamoci
I don't know, maybe you should, but when you make a, based on, yeah, just read it, if you, your years, because then when you get something to finish your out of it.
So, io si era anche different perché se più da adesso like
Nota,
così non mi
Well, I know, until we find out, this.
alla squadra.
so don't
the ball.
They keep working. Or,
We have to advise all this all we can say we can go to your house the decision congiunto. So it is an information for la missione è stata
well, if we have to give some license, what applies to either. So I'm gonna make a guarantee area on the border. I was going to our country or the green move around this. Okay, you can guarantee for, say, 4 days. You'll get the, okay, cost.
so wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
L'obiettivo di supporto questo che deve prendere io per quello non c'è
But you for some goals. First thing to see is one to play in
We do only the, benefits of there, it gets, and then dies. And some, it's even smart,
Yes.
Not the entire time. So, preso come servono.
Il laboratorio non c'è puoi fare una squadra che cambia assolutamente.
I believe the green one with when he, I'm gonna see the green says, the green.
Molti anni a Boston, gli strumenti che è Lost, una sorta di range jazz, assolutamente. Sì, in se stesso, analisi giusta c'è. Suggest. E quindi un po' più devono essere toccati. Tutti i voti degli strumenti che ti permettono di fare una prima analisi. Già penso che hai determinati cose. Però c'è qua sono specialisti quindi. Quale specializzazione training è necessario per l'identification? E sei sicuramente
I would say my own is first.
Come diciamo studenti tra virgolette reperti sulla materia una scuola che cambiano non sei costiano
fare fino a questo poi la nazione del team e poi
Quindi sono 8 persone. Squadre di allenamento sono 6. Perché? Identification.
Sì, dai.
Andiamo anche.
Maybe think must be identification and sending. Because you send identification, the people ma io questo
Coordinare, quindi comunicazione interna, ci vuole un po' di
Deve essere ai vari e anche dagli stessi
la lingua riescono a parlare con
ti consigliamo solo per esempio
Ok, sì, forme.
influenzamenti su
Artista,
sono proprio delle cose che non si dire.
ok, poi.
Dice appunto l'allenamento di testi delle persone non vuol dire che per caso in questo non vuol dire che si e anzi per anche
poi è giusto
a quel punto cosa vuol che ci dice? Preparation o preparation manager? Sei di adesso in mezzo preparation bravo c'era la
the personal society, you see. Training I guess. Training for dumping and dunning. So what you've done with the
un po' per aiutare per mandare una
c'è il board
perché io penso che
leaders from the different groups. That's possible. Yeah, or just
usually up to team five people, 2 people,
Vedi, devono stare.
uno di quei profili è l'unica vita che è disposto a fare azioni belliche per evitare conflitto.
Sono in un paese stabile che oltre ad essere fondamentalmente stabile anche veramente
E penso che è molto spirito,
noi diciamo noi assumiamo che sarà un'operazione che ha programmato sia un film
devi assumere e ti assumere hanno visto adesso magari la il primo giorno secondo voi dice
Then the open the
persone
I'm speaking about let's say I want to go to the I think it was something
Because we give them first brief experiences, we know what it is and how it takes so long to do that. Yeah, see you out to the board.
questo è
Nothing gets from the community development.
e sono
That doesn't get sales for it.
poi delle piccole come materiali che non
Clarify somehow that they're enough for their academics. So that you know that
metti la protezione sono le figliole
I think you will not be able to
Ah, okay, some kind of
camp
room that for security.
so provide some password and documentation that they are okay.
So,
No, we can just keep them connected. We're actually circles on the bound, so slow at this. Let's say you have money, you don't need it to just great, so you have people guarantee. And then you say there's no possible, it's bad. But you always do that, like, it's in that.
come lo puoi tirare? Ti faccio veramente un film.
non in English perché sono veramente forse la sempre
Yeah.
cosa sul parimentato we should be the Western South so we they put quindi studio del e sempre solo so we have to move in
Because the neighbor does, yeah, it's a insurance and it is. And the neighboring country, yeah, it's a insurance, you can go scale class and safety to there. So you might be clear, but you know, you also have those costs. If there are any goes there, then speak to the CC. So that's something that needs to stay with. If I just know, just because we want to know what it is, so. It takes everyone, we take it.
Sì,
Check if neighbor country is because then you can say, they do the same, so we will see with that neighboring country is members.
E devi anche però quello neanche sono sognando sono parte di quelle ragazzi che siamo solo di quella the results like in the performance you present.
I guess we can use the case.
Okay, warning signal of still 5 minutes. Then I expect the presentation. Depends on you.
Professor, other things? For me, actually. Excuse us, Professor.
Yeah,
Just some question.
yeah, it's okay.
We are first letters, first responders.
Yeah.
We have, how we consider ourselves
As an advisor.
as an advisor. So we need to consider also the security issues.
Yeah.
So how to protect the cyber team.
Yeah,
We can assume we are cyber team. So security has been prepared by someone else.
Of course, that might be the case, but then you mustn't question it.
Okay.
Because the general does not it as an interesting thing.
Okay, so we need also to define all main person are needed to protect.
And the same can also say, I would like to have a logistic supply, or I want to have personal protection, I want to have close protection.
Okay.
And then it has to be one. If you are now giving advice, what they want is for such missions.
Okay.
It is a little bit limited, I agree, but
Yes, okay.
with NCOs it's almost the same.
And regarding first in one, we
Yeah,
are advising in the top level, so it's politics.
yeah.
So we're talking about how we support to
Closing borders or not, and then there might be a scientific reason to do it or not to do it, and then you have the economic and the scientific medical aspects next to the solid weight of the process is of course the political level. But as a scientific and first responder level, you have also your opinion. Because otherwise you cannot complain and you afterwards move on a little bit. Other people said that they have to close the border and we cannot not operate. So it prevents such situations.
something else. But then, yes. Però se non vista la noticia deve essere non è la squadra, no? E poi lo trasferisco. Ma forse
Coming. Good question as well. No, you know.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the one.
Yeah, we've planned something.
You can do donation, mostly done to nation and not to populations.
No, but we
There's
just.
a typical also when you have a project of like USA, they donate to a certain nation and not to a population.
No,
The
mistake.
population might be off the board.
Dus we kunnen het also was my rain on the stand of one. And if you do it for us, then Ukraine is the West, you don't get them first.
Correct.
So, you know,
But also from Asian and some border. Between two sides of the coast. Defend the state of time. You can different things by sounds of But my biggest push is the original one because the north of the UK the more and south of them Bastion and the also the Malufa. Malufa in the west, and they are was the people as well. Yeah, also smuggling of people. Look, endorsement of shots and a lot of addicts of heroin. That I saw it. They are coming from the ground stuff, they were trying to work in the direction. Again, because they were which are lots of work and also students who were involved watching and then the young were shot universities to over the 50s. So there was a good sign. How many of them are? Stiamo giocando ok. Equipment per il sistema che abbiamo detto è fai anche il proprio mouse. Che poi tornate io che vorrei fare prima con le flamme e fare sempre quello che oggi questo mi piace secondo sì, quindi ovviamente ci sono quattro che riportano che vuole più quindi è lo stesso training che vuole sei tipo the circuit will not attain combination with assignments and specific trainings that were coach hostile environments se hai in civile preparati per no, c'è una falsa iniziativa per i costruiti and he was also for best sono i corsi di oh yeah, capitalists. Yeah, especially on the because when you have contact with the local generation of the families, normal immune system can cope with it. So when we are getting ill, we're getting older, certainly is COPD like symptoms from inhalation of you get sort of late flux of muscle. And then that's actually one way of they little sucks out of that. That building as a generation fading out. It's really important. She also not of explanations about the models. It was scored by them. They are very happy. It's here to use the management of people. There's another question. In Belgium, we have had longer ones. Okay, so all the organizations. And so also the young May Mr. Transfer to the civil okay, in the watching.
But a lot of people start thinking this is
I know, I have been there. I've also been at the airport, where they support the children. How was the name of the airport? Alminatia. You were there as well.
So, already the CBR is on the outside, but in Dubai, it's under the patient care environment. But maybe they are thinking about safety, going about this.
Whenever you need the extra advice, ask me. There you are.
Che passano per usare dei certi possibili quindi
Yeah. Maybe, but I work for the
Especially the biological part.
yeah, but also the radiological is also issue about the electric bones.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, it's not even lethal and just one, but it has a huge problem, which is a matter that people overcoming it. So when you have an exposition in the body, like this, that say and to somebody who is
Use the
turning around, it's not a big
and the decontamination also
ora sul occhio non spiego di distare
costs a lot of money.
But that is really benefit even the children. So, daar kan ik dan die zelf kan ik niet van op de kosten die je wel spelen. Dat zijn eigenlijk goed. Op ja, ging niet lekker. Nog helemaal in de international agreements en hier natuurlijk. Ja, ik denk dat dat is de manier voor de wel fijn. En dat is nu ook niet bij zich.
Alle punten zo.
Ja,
Dat is heel niet dat is dan
ja. Die geldt niet, maar is university in compound which attracts to the sugars on the surface of the bacteria and virus. So with this cloth, they get all the living organisms from the surface in the cloth attached. And it's very dangerous because and then because when you use this in the car, it's an infectant that clean the car quite quickly. And so when you have mental and somebody has influenza and was running the bottle car, just clean it up. And then it's virus free for the next night. And that's
But it's still not impossible. Still not.
On a very small scale.
Okay.
I know the education development. Like the and for decon, it's the antibiotic social use when you have on process. And you have the RSDL, just
You know, it's
which is also have issues, but it is you can more uncommon materials.
ok
And RSDL is really dedicated to the importance of it. And you have also this new We're coming time. We're going to presentations now. Okay. The general is there. You see him? He takes a seat. And we want to need to be a briefing. Sorry. I've now the time. Now the briefing. Can group 1, that's that group, give the briefing now. The Chinese volunteer.
Yeah, the rest of the day. According to the borders, we decided to keep the borders open, but some restrictions, so that there will be no waiting trips from our country to the other country or vice versa. So that we can keep it open for economic purposes and that people traveling in our country, so to the country for the round of people, that people have some kind of permit and that they can show that they're not sick or coming from an area where the sickness is. We decided to cordon off the green villages, so to do more sort of quarantine.
Quarantine, oh yeah.
Since we do not know what causes the illness and what kind of illness it is, that we want to make it sure first, so that we know what treatment is best. Keep it local instead of spreading it throughout the country. And for that, we think that people need a mobile lab that we could place somewhere in the vicinity of some labs, PCR radius, so that we can determine what kind of illness it is. And for the dress code, we advise BSL3 for people that are going into the green villages. And I suppose one is the fact that probably biologists and for infectious disease doctor will be the best people who do the things, where the infectious disease doctors will do the detection, the who are sick and they can take samples, it's a blood, and that the biologists can do the identification of the samples, what kind of sickness it is. And where it comes to training, well, I think that duffing and dunning is something that's really important to do, and how to secure the samples that are taken from the victims. And if you know what samples coming from what things, we know also how to transport them the same way. Furthermore, we think that's more or less like relation management. We think that we should get in touch with both leaders and religious leaders, since they probably see white people coming, taking samples from people with another color or another ethnic background. So we don't want to, well, we don't want people to see us as some kind of threat or that we make them even more sick. And when it comes to communication, we also like to know from the other country if they have received goods from the West. Because if that is unsure of everything, then we will communicate that we will also do investigation for all cattle, including the goats, so that we can either include the goats as one of the sources where the disease comes from, to cut them out as a source for the disease. And we think for the World Health Organization in it. Yeah, basically that, I guess.
Okay, nice. I want to hear group 2 first now, and then I will give some comments. Thank you for the presentation. Of course, it's teamwork.
Other operations, so we would ask for action military backup for us and a medical team as well. We would like to both the military backup will be able to provide security to the contingent and the medical team and be able to secure the zones of interest for sampling. We would advise at the present moment to not close the borders in order to not create an hostile environment and with waiting for further information from the CBRN team on what to do next. We would advise the country to impose some sort of control not restriction, we wouldn't call it that, but some sort of controls in order to prevent contaminated people to cross borders and to have some sort of permit to say that you have a reasonable motive for movement. And in our communication, we would advise in general, helped by our advisors, to encourage the population to not cross borders and to not move around the country whether that's possible. So when it's not urgent or not necessarily needed, we would advise citizens to stay put. Our team, we would like for it to be composed of like both a staffing team and some military, because we think this could potentially be a hostile environment. We would like our team to be composed for the most part of the military personnel, so we would like a microbiologist, virologist, and maybe a chemist, both the three of them with military background. We would also need a coordinator that would be able to communicate effectively with both the institutions and the international organizations and neighboring countries to be able to also establish communication corridors for future cooperation and to get information both from international organizations and from neighboring countries regarding their numbers and their data and the outbreak. We would need mobile lab ESL4, whether that's possible, and all of the maximum protection equipment for the personnel involved in the sampling and the manipulation of possible toxins and various viral agents. We would also like to have 2 advisors, one for both ethnic groups, that would be able to advise or coordinator on the best way to effectively communicate and best practice to have in order to engage positively with both ethnic groups. And examples, that's examples. Yeah, like when I say
The laboratory.
equipment, it's all the equipment needed for sampling and research, and also all of the protective maximum level protection equipment. Is that it? And yes, we would like to have these 2 different cultural mediators that can advise, and also get in touch with the elders of the communities, especially in the rural areas, to communicate that we are not what we're here for. So we would also like to prepare with the information available out of right now, press release on what we're dealing with. So from what we know so far, it's hemorrhagic fever, and that we're doing the best we can to look for more information and to contain the outbreak as much as possible.
Thank you. Now, you did excellent work, but I have remarks, of course. I will start with group 1. In contrary to group 2, group 1 want to close more or less the borders, and group 2 gives more freedom around the borders. You keep the borders open, closed, but open for economic and for permits, sick or not sick. And I have experience closing a border and being sick or non-sick. And this is a very excellent control whether you have an air conditioning in your car or not. Because they measure with the temperature. And when you have no air conditioning, you are sick. And when you have air conditioning, you are healthy. It doesn't work. I think that closing the borders is a signal which in those countries never works. Because when you close the official border, the unofficial border will open. So I think, especially because you are a foreign nation, you have to give the responsibility to the local population, especially when you have an armed conflict. And this is also the general opinion as I teach it at the native school. In group 1, they had also I can read my own thing. The mobile app and the PCR, very good, because then you contain also samples of the genetic material, which is essential for the identification. Dress code BSL-3. BSL-3 is a biosafety laboratory 3, and dress code is not mentioned by BSL level. For dress code, you have other indications. So BSL always is a laboratory. Detection and identification, of course, doffing and donning procedure, education, especially for the doffing, is important. Sample logistics was mentioned as an important aspect, and I'm happy that this plea from my side is there. And a very good point is that you say contact the religious leaders, and also in the communication to the population, the social workers are more effective than medical workers. It's also my experience, and I have even some slide presentation on that, that working with social workers who know the population is reliable, and you can have the discussion at the right level. So you get far more feeling what is happening. With religious leaders, sometimes it is more on a distance, but depends who is doing the discussion, you can create a relationship. Very good point that you mentioned it. Whether the other country also receive codes, of course, important, or perhaps the codes were traded. A lot of donated products are traded immediately afterwards. That is the experience we have in Africa. Yeah, people want to see the money, and they are short thinking and sell the goats, and they are rich and have money, and then the next year they are poor again, and they request another time the goats. That is the practical issue over there. So the goats, where they are donated, they never end up. They sometimes are in other countries. Okay, WHO to involve them, perfect. Group 2, they are more the iron side, have protection as a team, and that is of importance, because as a medical team, you are not shooting others. You need your close protection of group protection, so the special forces who take care of you. They decided not to close borders. The country should be in control. I think this is the right decision. And of course, you encourage not to travel. And you also describe and make it clear why it is not wise to travel. The sampling also got in group 2 attention, and to have the military scientists, they wanted to have scientists with military background. I'm very happy with this remark, because these are official reservists who are twice a citizen, the scientists in the society and the scientists in the military environment, and they have more ability to communicate. Also to bring the IOs, you mentioned the IOs, but I think you also indicate to NGOs. There's a difference between IOs and NGOs. You're aware of it?
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
And the two.
Yeah. IO is an international organization like the Red Cross, and an NGO is a non-governmental organization like Médecins Sans Frontières. So, and there's a difference, because IOs is working for member states. Red Cross has member states, and an NGO has no member states. It's non-governmental. It is only from donations from persons, but also from countries. It is not connected to the country. And you have also NOs, the national organizations like USAID. And yeah, you know the USAID story nowadays. The mobile app, perfect. Protection of these samples and having the right sampling material and sampling transport material in place. You are not going to the religious leaders, but the cultural advisors, from your own country. So, and culottes, as we mentioned it in the military, and the cultural advisor probably will connect quickly to the local religious leaders. So I think that's a good system. And yeah, the community communication over social workers and also with these focal groups like the meetings of the NGOs are perfect to be there as an observer, as military, but as a first responder, you can even participate in this. And also IOs, NOs, national organizations like the fire brigade or a national help organization can be present in these meetings. I think you did a good job both, and you also showed that you have listened to me the whole day, and I'm happy for that. Thank you very much. My pleasure to do, and I wish you a lot of success with the rest of the course. And then if you would like to contact me afterwards, I'm available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. That's not like it was.
Good time.
Perfect, yes.
Exactly 6 o'clock.
Thanks for asking.